Hey everyone, James again with TFBTV. Today on TFBTV, you read the title right, we are doing the Glock 17 versus the Hi-Point C9. No, this video is not a joke. A lot of people, the first obvious question they're going to ask is, why would you compare a $100 to $150 gun to a $500 gun? Isn't that a little bit like comparing a Lamborghini to a riding lawnmower? A really, really ugly lawnmower? So in a way, yeah, it is actually a little unfair to compare a gun that's $100 to $150 to a gun that costs 3 to 5 times as much. But what's wrong with that comparison? Don't you want to find out if the Hi-Point's worth $100 to $150? This could be one of the best deals in the gun industry for all you know. By the same token, don't you want to know what you're getting when you pay an extra $300 for the Glock 17 versus the Hi-Point C9? So we're going to give you the information so you can make that decision for yourself. We're going to answer those questions and many more today on TFBTV. So before we start shooting, let's talk about one of the most compelling arguments in favor of the Glock 17 over the Hi-Point C9. And that is that the Glock 17 holds 17 plus 1 rounds for a total of 18. And with the Hi-Point C9, you get 8 rounds in a single stack magazine plus 1 in the chamber for 9, or half the capacity of the Glock 17. So this has always been a really interesting issue for me because I'm not an engineer. I'm not really a gun expert, I just play one on YouTube. But I've always wondered why Hi-Point doesn't do double stack magazines. Now, I don't want to second guess my boys at Hi-Point. I love these guys. The people at Glock are fantastic too, but I love my boys at Hi-Point, but I've always wanted to ask them, guys, why don't you just do a Hi-Point that takes Glock magazines? Because I think that would close the gap a lot in terms of not only performance, but sales. So while the Hi-Point holds half as much as a Glock, they both weigh 25 ounces. So you're getting double the capacity in the Glock 17, but the same weight. Now, why does the C9 weigh the same as the Glock, but it only holds half the rounds? That's because the Hi-Point C9 uses a straight blowback design. That is, when you fire the gun, the slide just goes straight back. There's no unlocking of the breech. There's no true delaying system or a mechanical delaying system. The Hi-Point C9 just uses pure mass to delay the blowback of the action until pressures within the chamber drop to a safe level. On the other hand, the Glock 17 uses a Browning design lock breech with a tilting barrel. So what that does is the breech remains locked until pressures drop to a safe level. Recoil pushes the barrel down, tilts the muzzle end up, and you have the remainder of your recoil sequence. Now, on the other hand, if Hi-Point ever were to hypothetically switch to like a 15 plus 1 or a 17 plus 1 configuration, ideally using Glock magazines, how awesome would that be? Then that efficiency rating kind of goes up, right? Because you still have a 25 ounce gun, but it can hold 18 rounds or 16 rounds instead of just 8 plus 1. As far as shooting the Hi-Point goes, one thing I've complained about with Hi-Point is its pointability. So when you reach out there, you can see my natural point of aim, like where I want to extend and shoot. I'm a few inches low. I'm pointing kind of in the dirt with the Hi-Point. Now, Glocks have got a good grip angle, so whenever you're pointing out, you reach out, point, you're right on target. But I'm not going to beat up on the Hi-Point too much because it does shoot. The Hi-Point shoots. But also, like I said earlier, kind of comparing like a lawnmower to a Lamborghini. I guess it's really like comparing, I don't know, a 1988 Toyota Tercel hatchback to a Lamborghini. It's like it works, it's reliable, it functions, it'll get you there, but you can definitely put the gas pedal on a little bit harder in that Ferrari or that Lamborghini and just go flying. Now I think the Glock's a lot easier for follow-up shots. Maybe it's a combination of the grip angle and the fact that you've got a lighter slide working against you because of that mechanical advantage that it uses in the blowback design. But you've got a lot more weight on that high point slide that makes it top heavy, and you definitely kind of feel it flopping around whenever you shoot it, making it a little bit harder to get on those follow-up shots. The high point doesn't have a slide lock, or at least a slide release lever, so that means you have to manually rack the gun every time you need to chamber a new round on a locked slide. Now, at least it does have a last round slide hold open. So whenever you fire your last round in your magazine, it tells you, you get an indication, and it makes it easier to load and get back into action. So it's got that going for it, which is nice. I guess if it didn't have a last round slide hold open, that would be a huge check in the minus column. And you can see the magazine release isn't much to write home about. It's a teensy little button here, but it's in the right spot. I mean, so it works. I really haven't had a problem releasing the magazines. There's not much to the slide serrations, but the finish isn't very slippery, and the slide serrations, they work. I've done another video where I put Astroglide all over a high point C9, and I still managed to manipulate it just fine. One edge that the high point has over the Glock, I guess if you want to call it an edge, is a thumb safety right here. It's really like a bent piece of sheet metal. And it also functions as a manual slide hold open if you need it. I guess that's to say it's just functional enough. Now the Glock, on the other hand, the Gen 5 Glock, has an ambi slide release or slide lock. The pad for the mag release is much more prominent. It's larger area-wise, but it doesn't jut out very far from the frame, which makes it great for concealed carry. You really have to affirmatively hit it. Speaking of that, you also have a beveled and flared magazine well, at least in the Gen 5 guns. Makes it easier to reinsert your magazines. Compare that to the high point, which just has, you know, the little cutout that you don't have really a lot of room to work getting those magazines back into the high point. Another thing with the Glock 17, you have an accessory rail on the dust cover. With the high point, you don't. You have tons of third-party options for Glock accessories. I mean, if Glock makes it at the factory, somebody else makes a different version of it somewhere else. Magazines, triggers, slide releases, magazine releases, sights, you name it, the third-party support is endless, not so much with the high point. Now looking at high point versus Glock in terms of fit and finish, that's where you're going to see the biggest disparity. The starting point might be the slide. High point slides are made out of a zinc alloy. It's called Zamac 3. Inexpensive, not nearly as durable as steel, whereas with Glock, you have milled steel slides that are about as durable as they get. The Glock slides have a metal treatment and then a subsequent surface treatment, and whether it's Tenifer or black oxide or nitride or DLC coating or PVD, Glock has some of the toughest finishes on the market. And I swear to God, guys, I think that the finish on this gun is truck bed liner. That's not necessarily a problem. I've never had rust issues with a high point, which is kind of funny. Fit and finish is Maraca-like. By comparison, here's the Glock 17. I've seen these guns made. I've been to the factory. They are freaking incredible. The science that goes into making these guns is incredible. The quality control is incredible. And these Glock 17s just reek of quality. Sorry about the mud. Again, these went in the bayou about an hour ago. Glock has such a handle on quality control that it's unbelievable. They even manufacture their own tools that they then use to manufacture their own guns. While I'd consider the high point and the Glock to both be very reliable, the 10-round magazines can be a little bit picky for the high point. And I've had no problems with the flush fit mags, but the 10-round mag, and I've seen this in other reviews and other videos, you can see it for whatever reason doesn't want to chamber this top round. But I bet if I take it out, it'll work just fine. By the way, I've been putting lots of Wolf in the mix to make sure that it's reliable with steel case ammunition. I think that's important. So let's talk about the Glock 17 for 1 second. This is a Gen 5 Glock 17 9mm. This one, the Gen 5, is NDLC coated. If you know anything about Glock finishes, from Tenifer to nitride to black oxide, whatever, anytime they've changed the finish, it really doesn't matter because it's always been invulnerable. I like the grip texture in the Glock 17 a lot more. You also have adjustable back straps, so you can put larger or smaller back straps on the Glock 17. Compare that to the High Point, which I say has recycled Sega Genesis controller grips with wood screws. With a Glock, you've got the hammer forged polygonally rifled barrel. And with that 5th generation Glock, you're getting the Glock Marksman barrel, where they guarantee a 4-inch group at 50 yards or better. With the High Point, it's just conventional rifling, and I don't even know what it's made out of. I was really surprised the first time I ever shot a High Point pistol. The trigger has no reset whatsoever. So you have to basically let it all the way out to fire that second round. The trigger is really not bad. I've felt a lot worse triggers on a lot more expensive guns. So that's a surprise. It might not have reset, but the trigger itself is perfectly functional. Now, you get mixed emotions about the Glock triggers, whether they're good or bad. I would say at any point, they're better than the High Point trigger. And they also have an audible and tactile reset. But again, I've got to go back and say that the High Point trigger is not that bad. The sights on the Glock 17, this one has 3-dot Ameriglow night sights, but the typical sights on the Glock 17 are plastic, what I call like ball and basket. You've got a little half box in the back, and then you've got a dot for your front sight. Now, being honest, if we're comparing the stock Glock sights to the stock High Point sights, where you've got that orange and yellow contrast, the High Point sights aren't that bad, huh? The sights are pretty good. You have an adjustable rear sight with kind of orange rectangles, and then you have a contrast yellow front sight. All right, let's do some reliability testing. That's gross. Not bad. I don't think anybody was surprised by that. After all, this is the Glock 17, one of the most notoriously reliable handguns. But what about the humble High Point C9? Now, for those of you who have seen my CF380 video, you kind of know what's going to happen already, but for those of you that haven't, throw it into the bayou. Guys, the bottom of this little creek is just covered in silt. Got a bunch of mud in there. God. And again, works perfectly. This is the same thing that happened with the CF380. So a lot of people are surprised to find out that a $150 gun will actually function whenever you throw it into a silt-filled bayou. So I was surprised the first time I saw it, and I'm still kind of surprised, you know? Good job, High Point. All right, gang, final thoughts on the High Point C9 versus the Glock 17. Is the Glock 17 a better gun? Well, yeah, absolutely. Is it a $300 better gun than the High Point C9? I mean, I would say so, yes. But here's the thing that you can't lose sight of. A lot of people like beating up on the poor old High Point, but I've reviewed a few of these. I think I've reviewed about a half dozen in the past couple of years, and it all started when I got a High Point CF80 that I absolutely beat the crap out of. I made fun of it. I thought it was gonna be a funny review where I just beat up in this poor thing and it was gonna jam up all the time and it was gonna be crappy to shoot. And it ended up being pretty reliable and fairly shootable. Now, it's no Glock 17, but the important part is it worked, right? It delivered copper jacketed lead rounds downrange every single time you asked it to. And this was like a 10-year-old 380 that I bought used and I hadn't lubed or anything. So I was really impressed. The guys at High Point reached out to me and said, hey, we appreciate your honesty. So being honest, am I a Glock guy? Absolutely. Am I kind of thinking about being a High Point guy? Well, no, not really. The High Points have impressed me, okay? For $100 to $150, it works. Now, that said, there are some things that could use improvement. There are a lot of things that could use improvement, but realistically, I almost feel like they could make these accept double stack 9mm magazines or Glock magazines, and that would really propel the High Point C9. I always love doing these videos because you have people that say, oh man, James, you're such a High Point hater and a snob, and then you have people that say, James, you're a shill for High Point. And it really, I guess that means I'm doing my job. So would I ever buy a High Point C9? No, I'd rather put it towards buying another Glock. But I'm not saying that you guys shouldn't buy a High Point C9. So in any event, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you got a good look at what you get out of $150 versus out of $500. And now you have the information to make your own judgment. I want to say thank you to High Point and Glock because you guys always put up with my antics. I want to say thank you to Ventura Munitions for sending the ammo that I used today. They're the best. All that ammo, of course, functioned perfectly. And I want to say thank you to our newest sponsor, Blue Alpha Gear. If you want to win a Blue Alpha Gear EDC belt, hands down the best belt on the market, then go to patreon.com/TFBTV, get on there and enter. We're giving away 2 every month. But most of all, thank you to you guys. Couldn't do it without you. I will see you next week. Take care.